Hi, welcome back. So today I want to cover the different types of contracts. So today I'm going to discuss what is a valid contract, what is an unenforceable contract, a void contract, and what is a voidable contract. So let's begin. So a valid contract is the most secure contract that you can have. This is the contract that you want because of the fact that, again, if you ever have to worry about going to court, you want to make sure that you're going to court knowing that you've done everything correct so that you will win the verdict. So valid contract has to deal with essential elements. Now, what are those essential elements? The essential elements is going to be competent parties, right? We need to make sure that the persons that's getting into contract, whether it's the buyer or seller, they have to be of age of majority. Age of majority is 18 in the state of New York and most states. They have to have mental and emotional capacity to go along with that. You know, a lot of individuals, they may be of a certain age, but mentally, they may not be there, so you cannot have them to get into a contract because, again, they'll be able to easily get out of the contract once they go to court. So another thing is it has to be mutual parties. So you have to have both parties that agree. It can't be something from duress, somebody is forced to sell or forced to buy, right? So it has to be no duress, undue influence in order to make this decision. That's why it's called a mutual agreement. The next thing is going to be a lawful objective. It has to be for something legal, right? Purchasing or selling, but it has to be based off of something that's legal. So you have to have a legal objective. Fourth thing is consideration. Now, consideration typically is going to be monetary, it's going to be money. But it is possible that it could be, you know, like if I was purchasing for one of my kids, of course, I don't need them to write me a check. It could just be, you know, you can gift the property, you can sell your property for anything that you desire. So it doesn't necessarily have to be money, but of course, 99.9% that's going to be the thing of value for consideration is going to be monetary value. And then the last, it's going to be written format. Later on, we're going to talk about statutes of limitation. Again, when you go to court, you want to make sure that you don't have anything to worry about, that you follow everything, you have all the signatures. That's why a valid contract is binding and enforceable. So that's the reason why you want to have all the signatures, buyer's agent, buyer attorney, same thing, seller attorney, seller's agent, seller. You want to make sure that you have everybody's signature. Once you have all those signatures, now the buyer doesn't have to worry about the seller trying to do business with someone else, and vice versa, because it's binding both to the contract, the seller to the contract as well as the buyer to the contract. Now, later on, we're going to talk about how to get out of a contract, right? But that's going to be with mutual agreement. So the next one that I want to talk about is unenforceable contracts. So we just got finished talking about what is a valid contract. Now let's talk about a contract that's just unenforceable. Now, some reasons that a contract could be unenforceable is that one party to the contract, either the buyer or seller, they renege. They said they were going to come up with a certain amount, or they didn't get approved, or the seller thought they were able to sell the property. Maybe the wife doesn't want to sign off, right? Because if both are on the deed and title, you need both signatures. So one party reneges. So that's an unenforceable contract. Another example would be the time to enforce the contract. Again, going back to statutes of limitation, has expired. So now you can't enforce the contract because the statutes of limitation has expired. Another example would be the contract is written in vague or poorly worded language. So when you get to court, the judge would see that it's hard for anybody to be able to interpret what was the goals of either party. Because remember, when you go into court, the judge is not necessarily looking to see if you've signed a smart contract. The judge is just looking for intent. What was the intent when you entered into contract. And a judge, based off evidence and testimony, right, and witnesses, they're going to determine what was the intent of the buyer, what was the intent of the seller. So now let's talk about what is a void contract. So a void contract has the essential elements that we discussed earlier, but the difference now is that it's null and void, right? So it doesn't exist in the eyes of the law. So an example of a void contract would be an act of God. So in 2012 in New York, right, we had Sandy. Sandy came through, flooded out a lot of units. So if you was purchasing a property during this time and you're in the middle of your transaction, you've already done your inspections, you gave your deposit to the seller's attorney, and then Sandy comes through and floods out the property that you're purchasing. At that point, you have a void contract, meaning you as the buyer can back out of that contract. You can receive your deposit back, full deposit back, because you cannot be forced to purchase a property. It's not inhabitable at that point, right? Because it's flooded out. So that is an example of a void contract. And again, if it's a transaction where it's breaking the law, that also will fall under a void contract. So void contract, act of God, as well as operational. Now, let's discuss the final one, which is voidable contract. So when do you have a voidable contract situation? So a voidable contract, I need you to remember that it involves at least one of the party, either the buyer or seller, being taken advantage of. So one of the parties being taken advantage of, and since that one person is considered to be a victim, and let's say the person is the buyer, and let's say the buyer is 16 years old. So let's say you went out someplace, you hung out at a bar or a club or someplace, and you met somebody at the club. They ask you, what do? You say you do real estate. You're like, oh wow, you know. And of course, you don't know that this person is representing a celebrity, right? And a young celebrity 16 years old. They're looking for a place to buy. So you give them your business card. They're like, okay, great. I'll contact you. Maybe you can show us some places. Their budget is around $5 million. And you take them out, you show them a place. They like the place. They put a deposit on the place, right? Again, you still may not know that it's a 6-year-old celebrity that's purchasing it, because most celebrities will use an alias or somebody else. They may not want to have it in their name for obvious reasons. I mean, even investors don't have properties in their name because they don't have to worry about somebody coming to their place and suing them. They'll put it in a trust or in an LLC. We talked about that earlier. So you go ahead, you send all the documentation, they fill out the offer letter, your agency disclosure, you know, they send proof of funds, which is bank statements, and you submit the offer is accepted, and your client puts a deposit down. So put a deposit down, let's say 15, 20 days go by, you're about to close on the deal, you receive a phone call stating that you have to give all the money back to the buyer. And you're like, for what reason? And the person on the other end is like, well, the person that you're selling to is 16 years old and it's illegal what you're doing. You're taking advantage of them. I'm gonna take you to court. You get to court. The judge is like, yeah, Ramon, you gotta return all their deposit money, every penny back to them, because this is a voidable contract, because the buyer is not of the age of majority, right, which we discussed earlier, right, it's 18. But the judge will turn to, you know, provided that the 16-year-old is emancipated, right, meaning that they don't have a guardian that's making all the decisions for them. The judge will turn to them and say, hey, do you want to still continue the transaction, right? And let's say the 16-year-old said, yes, you know, I really want to purchase this penthouse. It's everything I always wanted. I'm emancipated from my parents. You guys can look that up. A lot of celebrities in Hollywood, they're able to purchase their own property way before they reached age 18. Just look up Jaden Smith. I think he's one of them. So anyway, the judge will turn to the victim, the 16-year-old, and ask them. And the 16-year-old said, yeah, I still want the payout. So the judge said, well, I will allow it. So yeah, you get your commission. You didn't do anything wrong, right? Because you didn't have the intent to work with somebody that was underage, and everything's great. That is an example of a voidable contract. So if the minor wanted to back out of the contract, they had authorization to do so. So we can't force someone that's in a voidable contract to carry out the contract, but they can force us, the seller, to follow through with the contract. So that's the difference. So that's the reason why when the courts get involved, they're to be on behalf of the victim. So in this scenario, the victim is a 6-year-old. Any questions about the 4 different contracts that we discussed? You can leave your questions in the comments. I'll go through those. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe. We want to make sure that this content is reaching as many individuals that's interested in real estate as possible. We want to make sure you get through that examination, because again, the exam is not even 5% of the real world. So we want to make sure that you're able to get your license as quick as possible, hopefully the first time, just by watching the videos at home.
Thanks again for coming to our channel. We look forward to continuing to help you and guide you through your real estate book. We are currently doing a New York real estate sales book, but later on we will follow with California sales book, Florida sales book, as well as New Jersey sales book. So look forward to those videos. One of the other things that we want to also discuss in the channel is investment, because most real estate professionals out there, they never get to learn about investment at their firm. So we want to talk about foreclosures, what type of properties you should buy. So don't forget to like and subscribe and share the video so that you'll be notified when we drop those videos. We're trying to drop at least a minimum of 3 videos per week, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video. Thank you.